Hello everyone. In the previous video I gave a brief introduction about the class in the API and the different methods which are there in the API. That is, I spoke about the two class and the 6 different methods which are there in the API, that is get row length, get column length, get Excel string array, convert cell to string, set output singlet result, and the last one was set output result. Now in this video I'm going to demonstrate this API using an example. Okay, so this is a website which I'm going to do a data driven testing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to enter a job title and I'm going to enter a location over here, and then I'm going to click on find jobs. Let's say I want to search for web developer in Auckland, and enter over here Auckland and click on find jobs. So if there are any jobs available for the web developer, then what the test script would do is it would pick up this entire text and store it in the Excel file. Okay, so first thing what we need to do is we need to see whether we have an identifier to identify this both text field as well as this button. So how am I going to do is I'm going to just do an inspect element, and let's see whether this text fields have ID or any other different identifier. So I'm just going to do an inspect element, and let's click on the text box over here. So if I click on this, so it has an ID which is what. Okay, and let's check for the location. Also it has an ID where, and for the button, so the button also has an ID FJ. Okay, and let's see whether this text has some identifier over here. So let's click on inspect element and check this. So it has an ID called search count. So I have already copied these IDs and made a script ready for demonstrating the API. So I will go back to the script what I've written in the Eclipse. So here is the script. So I'm just going to do a full screen. So the first thing what you need to do is you need to import the jar files. Okay, so how you can do is you can download the jar file from my GitHub page, and after downloading the jar file, since I've already downloaded this jar file, I'm not going to download it again, but to download this, click on the jar file and then click on view raw. What it would do is it would download this jar file, and then once you have downloaded the jar file, when you create a project, what you can do is so I've already created a project called Indeed Test, and I've already downloaded the Excel read utility.jar from the GitHub website. So what you need to do is when you create a project, you need to import the jar file. Okay, so I'm going to show you how to import the jar file. So you right click on the project and then go to build path and click on configure build path, and there is something known as add external jar. Click on that and go to the folder in which you have downloaded the jar file. In my case I've downloaded in documents, so I'm going to go, sorry, that's API. So since I've already downloaded and I've added this this jar, I'm not going to add this again, but when you want to add this, just click on the file and click OK, and then after that click apply and then click OK. So you can see I've already added the external jar file over here. So that is Excel read utility.jar. So I'm not going to add again. So once you add this jar file, I've written the test script, and I'm going to go through the test script what I've written. So as I told you, the both the Java so let me expand this. So you can see this is the Selenium class, and this is the class what I have created. This is the class name. So as I told you that in the previous video, both the class throws exceptions. So if in any method you are implementing the class, you need to handle the exception. So I'm implementing that in the main class, so main method. So I am throwing an exception over here. So I've written over here throws file not found exception comma exception. So you also need to implement this both this exception. So step number 1 would be to get the test input Excel file path, okay, and the sheet name and the output file path, that is the name of the file path from which you are going to get the test input. Okay, so this is the file, this is the Excel file from which I'm going to pick up the data for testing. Okay, so for this file the path is over here. In your case it might be something different. Okay, so that this is the first variable. I've named this as string input data file path. Then second is the name of the sheet. So if I go back, if you look over here, the name of the sheet is input. Okay, so I've written over here as input. Fine, and I want to store in the same location in which my input test file is. So if you go back, so in this folder, that is home documents in Excel, there is, as of now, there is only one Excel file, which is my input data Excel file, right? So I want to store in this folder only. So I'm putting the location for my output file over here, and the second step is to create an object for the class. So because we are reading .xls file, so I'm calling this class Excel read string array XSL. So this is the variable name, equal to new, to invoke a new object. So new Excel read string array XSL, and then the first, if you recall in the previous video, I told you that the first argument would be the file path, which is over here. That is the first variable over here, and the second argument was the sheet name. So the second argument is over here, that is the string variable which I declared it over here. Okay, so once you have created the an object of this class, the next thing is to get the two-dimension array. So how you do that is you first create an variable of two-dimension array. So how you create this is you write the type of the array, that is string, and this two square brackets over here, and then the test data array. I'm going to name this variable as test data array, which is equal to name of the object, which is Excel read string array XSL, which is over here, dot, and if you recall, one of the method was get Excel string array. So when you invoke this method gives you back a two-dimension string array. Okay, now the third step would be to make a driver object for the web browser. So I'm going to make a Firefox driver. So how to do this is web driver equal to new Firefox driver. This would create a new driver object. So I'm just going to manage the timeout for 3 seconds, so that it will wait to find the element, and if it doesn't find that element, then it would throw an exception. So I've managed this over here, that is driver.manage, and finally then the URL of the website, which is over here. So step number 3 was to make the driver object. Now step number 4 is what data object are you going to take from the test input data file. Okay, so this is my test input data. Okay, so it would be a job role and a region. Okay, so I have declared two variables over here, So the first variable, that is job role, and the second variable is location. I'm setting this to null. Okay, and when you pass both of this data over here, and when the script runs, when you click on find job, what you are going to get is basically this entire what the intention for this test is to store this entire text, that is jobs 1 to 10 of 307. So I'm just for simplicity, I'm just giving this name as, let's say, string job count. So I'm declaring the result data which you're going to read from the website, which is over here. Okay, so the step number 6 is now because you are going to run a script which is going to run for these many different data sets. So obviously, and if you are going to have only one result out, that is just the job count, you need to create a string array which will be holding the result. Okay, so because you are only going to get one result for one data set, for your one test data set, I have created a one dimension array and named this as result array equal to new string. Now the length of this array would be same as that the length of your test input data. So for example, if this is the length, if this is the row length of your test input data, the same row length should be of the output as well. So if you recall back, I did mention about this method called get row length. So what I do is I just invoke from that object, I just invoke this method called get row length. So it will create the same dimension array as that of number of rows in your test data input. So that is your step number 6. Step number 7. Now once you have got the test data input, that is in form of string array over here, you have already created now the result array, which is a one dimensional array which is going to store the results once the script has run. Now step number 7 would be to write a for loop, and what this for loop will do is it will go into the two dimension array and pick up individual data. So how would you write this? Now again depends, like if you look in this data set, the first row starts from a heading called job role and region. Okay, so if you have created a test data which has a heading like this, then when you write a for loop, you have to ignore this very first row over here. So in this case, in case of the code, you have to start, instead from 0, you need to start from 1. Okay, again I'm trying to explain you is instead of, let's say, if you don't have if you have a heading over here, right, job role region, then you don't want this to be given as a test input to your website, right? So if that is the case, you have to ignore the first row and you need to start from the index I equal to 1. Okay, so that is the reason I have put 1 over here, and it should loop how many times? It should loop as many times as the length of this row, right? So that is the reason the limit for I should be excel read string array dot get row length. Only till that row length it should loop, and that is the increment over here. Fine. So the first thing, if I go back to the Excel file, ignore this 1 2 3 4. Okay, it will confuse you. Just focus this. So if this is my row 1, okay, so if this is row 1, this would be column 0, this would be column 1, right? Similarly, row 2, column 0, column 1. So if I go back to the code, this would be job role equal to test data array I, where I would be obviously the row number, and column 0, which is in this case, would give you this data. Okay, and column 1, which is in this case, will give you the column, this column over here. So what you need to do is you just need to assign the job role to test data array I, which will take that row and column 0, and then the location to test data array I, which is again to the same row but column 1. Once you get both this data, what you need to do is you need to first find the text field which is going to input this job role. So as I mentioned before, in the portal over here, the ID for this was what, right? So I have written in the script, so driver.find element by ID what. The first thing we need to do is we need to clear the, if there is any text previously we have searched, we need to clear this. So the first statement would be we need to first clear. Then once you have cleared, then you have to send the data, right? So now you need to send a job role. So job role is already declared over here, just put that variable over here. So it will pick up the job role from this test data and send that to that respective text field. Then you need to input which location. So again, so if I go back, as I mentioned you before, the ID for this field was where. So driver.find element by ID dot clear. So first we need to clear that text field, and then we need to send the location, right? And once we send the location, then we need to click on this button. We need to click on the find job button. So the next step would be driver.find element by ID. The ID for that button was FJ, and then you need to click. So if there is any job role with that job role, if there is any jobs are there, then it should get the search count. Else, if there are no jobs present, then it should write fail. Now this can be done by different method, right? You can use a boolean, and instead of find element you can use find elements, but in I've used try catch method. You can use some different method as well. I'm just using this for showing you the usage of the API. Okay, so if suppose I'm just entering a random data and clicking on find jobs, I don't get that any job count over here. So if I don't get any job count, any such element, it should what it should do, it should log that it has not got that element, and it should log fail. So first what it would do, it would go, the page would open, and then, so let's say I'm going back, let's say I'm going to enter a valid data, let's say web developer. So when this page opens, it will try to get this element, the text. First it will find this element, and if it is present, then it will get this entire text. Okay, so that is what I've written in this code. So this is the job count, right? You wanted the job count. We had already declared this variable before, if you recall, over here. Okay, so job count equal to driver dot find element by dot id search count. The ID for this was search count, if you remember. So this was this element had an ID called search count. Okay, and if the script finds that ID, then get the text, store it in job count, and now this is the result array which we created before, if you remember, in this step, string one dimension array over here. What it would do is just put the same row number, that is I, and it at that same location it would at the same location it would store the job count. Okay, and if suppose we input some random value which does not make sense, it won't get that element, right? So it will throw an exception call no such element exception. Okay, now be careful while implementing this exception, because java.util has same type of exception. So if you are trying to implement this using no such element exception, just make sure that you import the correct exception. I'm going to show you up the file path. So if you look carefully, I have imported awk.openqa.selenium.no such element exception, because Java inbuilt has another exception. So just take care of that. So once you once if it doesn't find that element, then it should show fail. Okay, and when after this step, what we need to go do is we need to go back. Okay, so driver.navigate dot back, and then this loop will run as many as time as there are there are data present in this two-dimension array. Okay, and once this is done, then this loops ends over here. If I'm just scrolling up and showing you, this is the loop which starts over here and ends over here. Okay, once this loop is completed, then you need to store that output. Okay, so for storing the output, if you remember, since in this particular case, we are just storing one result output for one input data, right? So I'm going to use set output singlet result. Okay, and the first parameter is the test input data array, which is the two-dimension array which we got in this step. If you look over here, that is over here, that is the test input data array, which consists of the input data, right? And the second parameter is the result array, which is we declared it over here, which will be holding your test output result, which is over here. And the third is the output file path, which we had already declared in the first step. I'm just showing you, it's over here. So let's run the script and see what it does. Okay, so I'm going to paste this example so you can carefully look into the code and try to understand. So but for now, I'm going to run the script and see what does it performs. Okay, so this is my test input data, and in between I have written some random value, so that in order to check whether this script functions properly or not. Okay, so as of now, this folder has just the test input data doc xls. Okay, so let's run the script. It will take a while. So it has opened the browser. So it is inputting the data now. Okay, so you can see how quickly it is running the script. So it's a random value, so it didn't got that element. Okay, seems like the script is run, so let me see what it has in the output. Okay, just ignore this, it's giving me a warning since yesterday. So focus on this. If you will see an output when the script runs, it will give you an output. If it runs successfully, it will give you an output this as an output file name test output singlet, and this is a random number .xls was created at location /home /username document /excel. So let's go back and see in this location whether it has got the output or not. So I'm going to go back to the Excel. Yes, so you can see this file. So let's double click this. So you can see it has, this was the test input data. Okay, this was the test input data, this both, and these are the results which it has logged. Okay, and if you remember, we had inputted a random value for which we got fail over here. So uh, this is how you can use my API, and you can uh, cut down the number of for loops you have to write, because it handles everything for you. So this video was for if for the case if you get just one single column as an output. Okay, so what happens if you want to have like more than one output? Let's say one more column over here and one more over here, and it goes on. So for that purpose you need to use another method. So in the next video I'm going to demonstrate that with an example. Thank you for watching my video.